Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. Well, I decided it was time to do a new video like this for 2026, and I actually privatized my old one because that one was actually me looking through and seeing what were the common top 5 supplements that were recommended, going to various different sites. However, that was a few years ago, and things have changed since, not only in the categorization online, but also in what I use. Now, the ones that I mentioned were not all ones that I myself used. I was just going through and compiling the information. Today, though, it's going to be what my top favorite supplements are, mostly when it comes to brands. Now, I want to stress, anyone who's been following me for a long period of time know that I believe there can be a balance. I don't believe we should have to supplement all the time with pre-made supplements. I believe that in most cases, most of us can just get the nutrients we need from our food. But there's plenty of situations where that isn't always the case. And sometimes we can be going through some specific health issues where our body is going to need more to help heal. And that's what I've been dealing with myself. And so I have been taking more supplements again, where I'll go through periods of time where I take none at all. And then there's certain ones that I do take on a daily basis. And that is the one that you're going to like best because it's going to save you the most money. So I'm going to start off with that one. And what that is me using whole foods, especially if it's things I can grow myself, and using those to either make an extract or a blend like this. Now, I recently did 2 different videos I'm going to link to down below. One is about my mixed greens, and then the second one is about the nori that I have since added to my greens blend since shooting that video. And this right now only has 3. I used to add a whole bunch of different things from my garden. And in that video, I go over a lot of the different herbs. I'm sure I left some out that I add, but this particular one is nettle and dandelion leaves that I grow right here on my own piece of property, entirely organic, plus the addition of the organic nori I purchase because I don't have an ocean in my backyard. Now, my greens blend goes into every meal I make. And I've also more recently been focusing on using it in tea every single day. So I'm getting all the great nutrients from the most natural source that I can, and I know exactly what is in this. Some other ways people could make their own with something like this and using whatever greens, plantain, lamb's quarters, carrot tops, a lot of your different berry greens and vegetable greens, beans, peas, squash, sweet potatoes, etc. And you can just powder those up and encapsulate them. And then the other thing you can do is you can also make a tincture out of the greens, which I have done. My problem with making a tincture out of them is I always forget I have it and forget to take it. But I don't worry about it so much since I'm using it in other ways. So there's a few different ways that you can get a lot of great nutrients, vitamins, and minerals, and get them straight from your own backyard, and it can cost you next to nothing. Doing it the way I do, use it most, cost me nothing other than the nori I added in here. But making capsules means you would have to buy the empty gel caps or have some kind of solvent that you may have to purchase if you're not making it yourself. A lot of my extracts I make from homemade wine from our own fruit, mostly the grapes and some berries. And that's a really cheap way to make extracts. I don't use that for every single tincture I make. I do have a few where I do use vodka because of its strength, but in most cases, like especially more delicate herbs, wine, homemade wine, especially because you know exactly what's in it, is a cheaper way for me to do it, and it works great. So that would be the top of my list right there. But let me move on from there. The next favorite brand of supplement that I have been using more and more, but it's far more expensive than what I was most commonly using, and I still do actually, and that would be the Azure Well brand. Right here I have the Whole Food C complex and the Activated B complex. When you're taking vitamins like this, especially Bs, I personally don't think it's a good idea to take your Bs separately. I think it's best to get them, if you're going to take them in supplement form, in a whole complex form where you're getting all of them in there, because they are designed to be able to work together. A lot of the minerals and vitamins you take are synergistic. They work together, and that is important. A lot of us women especially were taught years and years ago, oh, you got to take your calcium supplements, but nobody was telling us it's not a good idea to take calcium without some other added minerals that prevent the calcium from building up in the body, causing calcium deposits and even kidney stones and the like. So calcium should always be combined with minerals such as manganese, magnesium, and potassium. And a lot of your whole foods, by the way, that have calcium in them have at least one or more of those other nutrients in them. And this is why going with whole foods should be the thing you're looking at first. So again, the supplements are typically going to be something you only take when you really need it, or let's say you can't grow your own food and you have a hard time getting good organic non-GMO foods that are going to be high in these various different minerals and vitamins. So anyway, Azure Well, you get it from Azure Standard, and if you have access to Azure Standard, you can either order online. You do have to pay shipping when you do that, but if you have a drop point, well, you may still have to pay shipping, but it's going to be a lot lower. And if you live in an area like we do, like if you're in Washington or Oregon, you may not have to pay any shipping whatsoever if you're going through a drop point. So that's now what we do. And I've been very happy with these. And then my third go-to is the Now Foods. Now Foods or Now brand. Like this, I've actually had these for a long time. I forgot I had them. And I found them and I'm like, I'm going to start taking those, when I kind of looked into it again with what I'm, recovering from. I realized this would be a good thing to add to my diet for now. And one of the things that's really important to me about some companies, such as Azure Well, or even this here, is that when it comes to making the gelatin capsules, they're either going to use a vegetable gelatin or a bovine gelatin, beef gelatin, and not pork, because I try like everything to avoid pork. And so that's something to consider. If that's an important thing to you, make sure you're reading the ingredients. This particular one, I bought it years ago, and so I wasn't sure. It wasn't something I would have thought to check. And this uses bovine gelatin. So that is one of the main things I look for. Now, there are a few other brands I may fall back on if Azure Well or even Now does not have exactly what I'm looking for. But when it comes to brands, right now, these are my top two, aside from obviously the Whole Foods. There's one more. I almost forgot. I'm glad I wrote it down because I don't have as many of these, but I meant to bring the bottle in. I'm sorry, I forgot, but that would be the Swanson's. Swanson's brand makes some really good supplements using whole herbs. So their lung essentials is one of the things that we started using for when Patrick's lung issues start to crop up again due to years of the industry he was in and working with chemicals, and it's clearly done some damage to his lungs. And so when they start to act up, he takes that along with my own homemade Breathe Easy extract, which has a couple of herbs that are not in the Swanson's. But when I read the label of the Swanson's, some people were really telling us about that and what was in that. I'm like, this is excellent. There's some great stuff in here. And so that combined with the tincture I make myself, because not all the herbs that were in the Swanson's capsules are ones that I have or can grow. And they also, then I realized I have another one by them. I can't remember what it is because it was one I bought years ago to try out. I think it was some kind of herbal one. But anyway, I do think their Swanson's is a great brand. You can look into those. And I do always have my referral link to Azure Standard in the description box. And if Now has an Amazon storefront, I think they should. I will link to that. And if Swanson's has, which I believe they do, has an Amazon storefront, I'll also link to that. So that is my top 4. And then as far as any other brands I fall back on, I make sure now that I'm always reading the label, reading the ingredients to see what they're using, not just in the gel caps, but what kind of other things might be added to those capsules. And by the way, if I'm buying them, I only ever get capsules, never ever tablets. So that's an important thing. And, to look and compare, and especially if you're someone who can't have certain minerals or nutrients, you got to make sure you're paying attention. Me being thalassaemic due to my Mediterranean descent, I have to be very careful and make sure I'm not taking any kind of supplement that has iron in it. I don't need iron. I get too much iron. And so you got to watch out for those things. Years and years ago, when I was teaching dance and I started taking a B complex I was getting from Costco at the time. This is a long time ago. And, because I've, again, always believed in taking a good B complex. And I noticed that over a period of several weeks, I was feeling worse and worse by the day. Every day feeling worse and worse and worse. And it was getting harder and harder to teach dance because I felt so heavy and exhausted all the time. And I couldn't figure out what was wrong. And then one day as I was looking, I happened to walk by the fridge. I always keep my supplements on top of the fridge. And I'm looking and I see that bottle of B complex. And I thought, did I ever even read the ingredients in that? I'm thinking it's just B vitamins here. So I turned around, I read the ingredients and realized it was very high in iron. I had no idea. So I had to quit taking those. And it took me several weeks to finally get back to normal again. So these are the things you got to make sure. Just because I recommend a brand or a type, always make sure you read your ingredients before you buy it, and then before you start taking it. Because yes, that can be a major mistake. If you can't have iron or selenium or something like that, you got to watch for these things. By the way, mentioning selenium, I do need selenium for sure. So my favorite source for selenium is Brazil nuts. I love Brazil nuts. Did a video on that. I will try to take 4 or 5 a day when I remember. Eat 4 or 5 a day. And no, they're not going to kill you if you eat more than 2 a day. Good grief. That is just a big scare tactic. People have been eating Brazil nuts by the handfuls for centuries. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please share your thoughts and ideas, your favorite brands, your favorite types in the comments down below. And thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.